this episode feels like it's all over the place, and it's partly because I'm high on painkillers, like, oh, what's up, superstar? So it's very clear from last week's conversation that you and me have very similar life experiences. Last week, in case you missed it, I dropped an episode called The Hustle Sucks, plainly. So I definitely am not the kind of person who comes online and acts like everything is fabulous when everything is not fabulous. If there's one thing that I always committed to, and I said this in last week's episode about documenting my journey to, wherever it is that I'm going, pursuing my dreams, chasing after my goals, is that I never want anyone to look at my journey and think, oh, it was smooth sailing from point A to point B. I think I get so many DMs so often like, oh, Barbara, what keeps you so motivated? Like, you wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, you get this done, you do this done, and then you sleep late, and then you get up and you do it all over again. Like, what keeps you going? What motivates you? How are you so high energy all the time? And I remember this week particularly, I was sick out of my mind. Like, I think it's one of those things where if you don't rest, your body will force you to rest, because you know me. If you know anything about me, is that I will get up and I will work. Like, the work will be done at the end of the day, because I'm just that person. I believe in showing up and always giving your best when you do show up. In fact, one of my mentors, she's not like a real life mentor, she probably doesn't even know I exist, Leila Hamosi, always says, forget your mood, follow the plan. If the plan was to do 3 sets at the gym that morning, you do those 3 sets at the gym that morning, because your emotions will always cause you to do the opposite of what it is that you're actually trying to achieve. And so that's what I live by too. And that's why she's my mentor, because I feel like a lot of what she holds as important and prioritizes are very similar to what I prioritize in my values. And so it just makes sense. But my friends this week have been begging me to rest. I remember, Palesa, actually, if you've watched any of my content on social media, my Nivea ads, my whatever ad you saw that was like good camera quality, that was probably Palesa. She did my Miss Essay, what do you call it? Digital campaign. Every single video, the video of me running down the Hartbeespoort Dam, like all that stuff. Palesa has been in my grind since day one, and I think she's the one person who will generally call me and say, hey, love what you're doing on social media, everything looks fabulous, but I need you to stop and rest. I've got another friend in Bali, she's also just been like, I hope you're resting. Like, literally yesterday sent me a message like, I hope you're sleeping, I hope you're resting. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm resting. But really it was just because my body got to a point where it was just like, hey, you need to rest or you die. And I was forced to rest. I didn't have a choice. And I think this week forced me to reflect on so many different things, because I didn't have a choice but to stop and to reflect. And it's so crazy to me how everything in my life kind of happened in such a simultaneized, whatever. It all just was orchestrated in such a way that this was the perfect week for me to just sit down and rest. I literally had one gig the entire week, and so I really could allow my body to do what it needed to do and take me on this journey of rest. And something that Palesa had mentioned is that my toxic trait is I will grind and grind and grind and grind and grind, but at no point of the grind do I feel the responsibility to rest, which kind of affects how you feel throughout your hustle. And I think one of the things that contribute to the hustle sucking is you being someone who's so ambitious, who's so relentless at pursuing their dream, that because you don't take the moment to stop, pause, breathe and reflect, you don't reflect after you've achieved a goal, you just tick it off and move on to the next goal. If you are anything like that, then you probably are just like me, in the sense that you never take the time to just pause and relish in the fact that you did that, and I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to surviving the hustle, is that you really need to pause and pat yourself on the back for each and every milestone that you've achieved, no matter how small or insignificant you may think it is so significant to your mind, it's so significant to your body, and sometimes a change of scenery is exactly what you need in order to come back with better ideas, with a fresh perspective on how you can tackle something that seems like an issue, but maybe was just an easy solve. So yeah, I've been planning a holiday for the past week now. I'm going to see my grandmother this weekend, hopefully. Fingers crossed. If you see me on the weekend and I'm not at my grandmother's house, don't judge me. I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl trying her best. But the plan is to go see my grandmother. I've taken leave from work from the 18th to the 30th of April. And so that should give me enough time to visit family, to rest, and then reflect and recenter myself to make sure that we're not just cutting with a blunt axe and expelling energy, but when we're cutting to chop, and the trees are actually falling down so we can get that bag, period. The concept of rest is so difficult because I feel like rest often involves money. Like, can you rest without spending money? That's just how I feel. When I'm resting, I'm thinking about all the money I'm losing while I'm resting. When I'm resting and spending money while resting, I'm thinking about how much money I'm losing trying to rest when I really should be working to gain more money. And it's not necessarily to say that I am money obsessed or anything like that, but I feel like, and you might relate to this because you're probably also the fruit of the first generation that is able to do what they really want to do with their lives. Like, I've seen my parents sacrifice so much to make sure that we have our degrees, sacrifice so much to make sure that we went to good schools or good enough schools, or lived in good enough neighborhoods for us to be a better success story than they were. I mean, for my mom, she was born in a village and now she lives in a suburb, and so for someone who grew up in a suburb, the expectation is that you maybe will give us something else. Your children will grow up on an island. You know what I mean? Be an island that you own. And yes, that pressure can be quite a lot, especially if you aren't even in a traditional work environment. If you are a hustling babe, wow. If you're an entrepreneur, wow. The pressure to do well can be high. But also, it's then knowing how important money was in all of those things and the role that it played, and growing up hearing things like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, so don't waste this, don't do that, don't study that, it's a waste of money, there's a lot of like conversation around what wasting money looks like, but not too much conversation around what not wasting money looks like. And so when you grow up, and it's not your parents' fault, I just want to put that out there. Like, I'm not saying my parents, I'm saying that when you watch people do so much for you, it can be tough for you to now learn how to navigate. And actually, when I went to church, I don't know why I keep speaking in plural. When I went to church this morning, the pastor was actually speaking about the importance of money. And he went off to just explain his childhood and da-da-da-da. And when he moved to Sandton, this is where he was at and da-da-da-da. And it was just a very connecting moment, if I can. Like, I related so much to that story because I was like, wow, like, we really all lived the same lives. And what he was saying is, like, for most of us in the room, our parents have never been able to teach us how to invest and how to build wealth, simply because they themselves didn't know. They were just doing their best to give you a better life. And so when it's your responsibility to be the first generation in your family that starts the generational wealth that will then go forth, Kuba tricky, Kuba tense. How do you navigate stuff that you don't necessarily know how to do? And for me, going on holiday is just one of those things where I'm like, guys, do you know how much it costs for me to just get on a plane and go to Cape Town for a weekend and say I'm going to rest? It's a lot of money. And as much as, yes, that's money you're investing in yourself, it can feel like quite the waste. Like, it can feel like, people always say, oh yeah, just take the day off and go to the spa. And it's like, babes, it might just be 1,000 rand, but 1,000 rands, babes, 1,000 rands. Surely we should be using that money in a more productive way. And someone else was telling me about how, and I say this a lot actually, that my time is better spent editing videos than it is cleaning. And yet yesterday, despite my period pains, I got up and I cleaned the apartment. In fact, my neighbor felt so bad. I was taking out the trash, but I'm walking like this because my period pains are so bad. And he was like, and then what's going on with you? And I was like, oh no, I just want to take out my trash, but my cramps are so bad. And he was like, girl, sit down. I'm going to take this trash. excuse me, and he helped me take the trash out, which was fabulous. But I think it's one thing to know that you have the freedom to make certain decisions and you have the ability to do certain things, but it's another thing to actually make the decision and do those things for your benefit because of the limiting beliefs and the way that you were raised and all the things that just happen in your brain. And so, yeah, that's literally, I think all I came to say this week is like, I'm really learning, and I realized today just how much work still needs to be done in order for me to heal in my relationship with money. And because I need to heal my relationship with money, I also need to heal my relationship with work, with hustling and whatever. Like this thing of me always wanting to have 3 jobs because I feel like that's what's going to keep me alive. But like, I don't need 3 jobs. Like, do you really need 3 jobs? Like, it's a bit excessive. So just needing to learn when to dial it up and when to dial it down and not constantly live in survival mode when really there's no need for you to survive anymore. Like, babes, you're okay. Like, you're really fine. And I hope I'm making sense because this episode feels like it's all over the place. And it's partly because I'm high on painkillers, you know? Like, I've taken so many painkillers. You can see the bed behind me if you're watching on YouTube. I just got up from a nap. The painkillers took me out. And life is just a wow. But essentially, in speaking of the hustle and balancing it with rest and all these different things we need to navigate, there were 3 main points that I wanted to share with you today. Number 1 is that we need to have clear directions about what it is that we want. You know, when we're hustling, when we're pushing, when we're grinding and we're trying to follow the plan and forget about our mood, you really need to know where your end goal is and where you're going, so that along the way, if like me, you need to now rest, if you need to now pause something, if you need to now take a step back from something, it's easy for you to discern what to take a step back from and what to pause and what to eliminate, simply because you know exactly where you're going. And so you can just ask yourself the simple question of, does this feed into my end goal? Number 2 is committing to excellence. I was speaking to my cousin earlier this week, and he was just laughing and talking about how, you know, people can say a lot of things about you. Anyone can comment on the one time they met me in the mall and I was in a bad mood and maybe I didn't greet you well, or, you know, I don't know what else people could be saying about you out there, but anyone can say anything about me. But one thing that they cannot fault me on is the fact that I'm excellent, that if I do a job, I do it well and I show up to the best of my ability, whether I'm sick, whether do you remember that one time, like, girl, You've seen my Instagram stories. If you've seen my Instagram stories, you know there's no amount of sickness that will stop me from showing up to work, but also too from showing up and doing a really good job. Let's just keep it at that. Commit to excellence. I think this Eliminate Excuses conversation is an episode for an entirely different day, because there was a scripture that was read in church today and immediately it stirred something in my heart to say, go to that podcast, sit down and tell those people to get up and do the work. So yeah, you're sad, I'm sad, we're all sad. The hustle sucks. Everyone like goes through that, whether they are hustling as an entrepreneur or whether they're working a full-time corporate job. Everyone goes to a point where they're just like, I'm giving so much of myself, I'm exhausted. Babes, all you need is a break. Take a break and come back, you'll be fine. And then the last one is to be a persistent learner. It never gets easy. And I think speaking to my cousin really, really helped kind of paint that clear picture for me to say, like, regardless of whether you're in an executive position, because that's where he's in an executive position, or you're starting out at the bottom, or you're somewhere in the middle trying to figure out how much closer to the top you can get and climb the corporate ladder, it doesn't get easier. There will be tough days, there will be tough months, there will be tough seasons. What's important is that you don't focus on the toughness of the season, but you focus on the lesson that you can get out of that season. I think one big lesson that I learned in this past week is that I really need to be more vocal about how I feel. And that's in everything, my relationships, my romantic relationships, platonic relationships, work relationships, every relationship, just learning how to immediately nip things in the bud and say, hey, this doesn't really sit well with me. How can we make this better? Because it helps make the hustle easier, whether it's the hustle for love or the hustle for friendship. Like, it really makes the hustle that much easier to just get up and say, yo, I'm actually tired, guys. I need a break. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Be a persistent learner in this toughness. What can I learn? Ask yourself that question, and then focus on the process of that learning. Focus on the process of that lesson. I'm getting dizzy now. I think I need to go lie down. But I've said a lot in this one conversation. I really hope that it made sense to you and it was worth your time. I don't take for granted the fact that you show up here every week and you have your tea with me. If you're listening on Spotify, I'm holding a little teacup because I've been drinking peppermint tea. Apparently it helps with cramps. I feel like they're liars, but cheers to us learning lessons and really trying our best. Ding.